how the Americans described their entry into the province of Bukidnon at the turn of the last century. In a lot of ways, it reveals the credo of benevolent assimilation that provided internal logic on the one hand, at the same time, exposed the clear economic goals that ultimately fueled the American occupation of the islands. According to an official government report submitted to the Philippine Commission in 1908, Dean Wester, who was the then Secretary of the Interior of the American colonial government, went to province of Bukidnon in 1907 to inspect the area together with a certain Frederick Lewis and Lieutenant Manuel Fortich Sr. of the Philippine Constabulary. So, walang na-discover sa Bukidnon kaya mga dili maayo nga ginabuhat sa mga negosyanteng taga-baybayan. Kani nga mga negosyante nga na-discover sa mga Amerikano kay nagalihok sila para sa ilang lowland politician principals nga gikan sa Cagayan de Oro nga nagapalit og abaka sa mga katutubo sa grabe ka gamay nga presyo. So ginahadlok sila og pusil ug naga-warning sila og sedition sa kung kinsa may dili mosunod sa ilang gusto. So absentee landlords also from Cagayan de Oro forced their Bukidnon's tenants to sell to them their abaca and other cash crops. The American officials were properly aghast and noted that the non-Christian Filipinos were probably the most robbed and oppressed by the lowland trader. To free the natives from bondage of such relations, the American delegation ordered the active occupation of the province of Bukidnon by the colonial government. This account reveals the pretext to the entry of American business interests into the province of Bukidnon than in the feudal relations they had with their landlords who were mostly based in the coastal towns of Misamis and Cagayan de Oro.
The account disclosed as well as that the natives subsisted mainly on hillsides within for farming where they planted root crops and relied on their trade of abaca. As a remedy to this miserable situation, the American settlement farm school for the Bukidnon where the native could learn to plant rice and corn as cash crops and from where dependable supply of food can be sourced. From 1881, cavans of corn harvested in 1918. The output increased to 145,894. Managed shift in the dominant mode of production formed subsisted farming by the Bukidnon natives to a new economic model introduced by the American large-scale agricultural production. Local were conscripted to become student and the farm workers in this settlement farm school. The entry of this capitalist relation under the benevolent patronage of the American masters transformed the local economy and further suited the local indigenous population into the working of the new economic order as it responded to the demand for cheap raw materials for their industries such as corn and timber, rice for the local food supply. The entry of new mestizo of new economic as also apparent as the American entrusted the affair of the province to local leaders such as Manolo Fortich Sr., who himself established cattle ranches engaged in large-scale agricultural production, basically assumed to rule as the proxy American colonial power in the area.
Good day everyone, I'm Regine Discinaire. So I discuss about the cattle ranching in Bukidnon and agricultural plantation in the Americans. So Bukidnon is not all the forest or verdant plains, and when the Americans arrived, they also saw that this topography, the napod siya too characterized by kanang grassy plateaus and deep canyon. So paired with favorable climate and abundance of water supply, the province with their cattle region, the country with the canyon serving as a natural barrier to contiguous animals disease. In fact, not not few Cagayan de Oro based on cattle rancher already had thousands of heads of cattle in some areas of Bukidnon, which attracted American colonial officers to prospect of operating their own. Not for long select group of American military officer under rancher Filipino friends with granted 25-year lease with minimal rentals in wide areas of the Bukidnon Valley. So, na siya sa Diklum Ranch it is a American finance ranch cover an, an area of about 10,000 hectares. So, a violation of ownership limits to individual settlers and corporate ownership under American colonial law. So, si Den si Den sister is the Interior Secretary to the Philippines Commission, runs his own ranch in an area near Valencia with towards of his of cattle. So, his guide, he first visited the Bukidnon Philippine Constabulary Manuel Forte Sr. put his own ranches in Maluco and Maramag and became more successful at raising cattle than his American counterparts. His influence to economic and political history of the province will be long lasting. So, na sila own cattle nga gi-enterprise by kuan siya 1939 16 17 ranches well already with a combine of 7,076 cattle heads. Then muna siya ang kuan ga occupying bare expenses of pasture land. What were the consequences of this colonial appropriation of vast tracts of land for cattle raising purposes, many of which were within traditional domains indigenous communities? So it is the same story of displacement, even violence as the oral histories of indigenous communities reveal. To protect their prized cattle, the ranchers fence of wide areas treating trespassers than they would be captured or shoot. So, the Lumad in these areas became unfortunate victims of the violence inflicted by the private armed guards and cowboys of the ranches because of the restrictions of land that has been for centuries their traditional domain. It became difficult for them to access the traditional sources of water and their farm plots. So, and the next is agricultural plantation at American. So, diri sa Bukidnon is na brand associated with the province is mo na siya ang Del Monte. So that can pineapple produced from the ancestral lands of sa Lumad sa Bukidnon. So na siya color bit about sa kanang green and yellow. So it is it is at muna siya ang famous the world over, and also the very manifestation of how the economy of the province of Bukidnon was now tied the global economic order. So face sila problems in production in Hawaii and California. So California Packing Corporation or CalPac it is a source alternative areas for production with the found and Bukidnon. So, ga-establish siya sa Philippine Packing Corporation and began to plant pineapple commercial scale in 1928. So, nag-started ilang with na siya with permit to plant on only 1,024 hectares. So, in keeping with the limits of corporate ownership of land stimulated in Organic Act in 1902 and 1916. So, after that, political pressure from the company is nag-directed siya sa acting Governor General Gilmore of the American colonial government granted them sa 1452 hectares of public land declared in Bukidnon Pineapple Reservation through Proclamation number 30 in 1939. So, nag-receive gyapon sila another kanang 20,000 hectares na gi-manage siya, they managed to establish public lands also in in Bukidnon, which is kanang gi-declare siya sa US Naval Reservation. Thank you.
Good evening everyone, I am Jessa P.Sigongan. Under the Regalian doctrine that the Americans imposed on the land, all untitled land automatically became part of government colonial property to be disposed of according to how they see fit. The effect of all this colonial appropriation of land for logging, cattle, ranching, and plantations is their cultural and economic displacement. This would have the consequence of the indigenous tribes further moving into the margins and interior of Bukidnon economy and society. In 1935, Philippine Packing was only able to utilize 3,000 hectares of the public land they have been granted. They set up a cannery for the export of tinned pineapple in Bogo, Cagayan de Oro as early as 1930, where they were able to produce 277,131 cases valued at $476,000 in the period 1930 to 1935. In the next few years, with the steady expansion in their operations and before the outbreak of the Second World War, the company was able to harvest 24,159,389 pounds of pineapple, amounting to 1,672,849 US dollar. Law 1987 328. In the next decades, Philippine Packing and their operations based in Camp Phillips, Bukidnon, would become famous for providing a slice of Americana on Philippine shores.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Queenie Darcy Valle reporting. However, just like the outside of the gated homes of the politician landlord class of the province and the controlled environment of Camp Phillips, there is the even worsening case of landlessness and poverty, especially among the Lumad population. Apparently, the logging, cattle raising, and large-scale agricultural plantations that the Americans established and the local Filipino elite continued, have not been able to contribute to the upliftment of the lives of the people and the development of the province. Ultimately, it was the same desire for profits which was behind American presence in the province and not really the express objective of emancipating the natives from their backwardness. In hindsight, regardless of how the Americans saw themselves, they were not unlike the lowland traders out to make a killing from indigenous land, labor, and resources. Soon, a powerful landlord class would take over from the colonial authorities and reign over both the business and politics of the province. Elsewhere in Mindanao, vast areas of traditional Moro and non-Christian indigenous grounds continued to be converted into plantations for palm oil, banana, pineapple, and other monocash crops over the decades. In Agusan del Sur and Davao del Norte, agricultural lands ranging from 1,000 to 23,000 hectares in areas customarily owned by the Lumad have been appropriated for this purpose by both government and private entities. Another prominent transnational corporation, Dolly, was established in South Cotabato in 1964, following the success story of Del Monte in Bukidnon. Similar to the privileges given to the latter, Dolly was able to acquire territory virtually without limitations, appropriating even homesteaders and Lumad ancestral land. A significant portion of the 5,569 hectares that Dolly initially secured came from land awarded to migrants earlier through the National Land Settlement Administration and B-Laan ancestral land. They have since been embroiled in a long, bitter struggle to take back land that was stolen from there for the past decades. At present, there is also an ongoing expansion of large-scale agricultural plantations in Mindanao, which have encroached upon areas of traditional food crops such as rice and corn. An estimated 300,000 hectares of land have been planted for export, with monocrops such as banana, pineapple, coffee, sugarcane, rubber, and palm oil. This number will continue to grow as the impulse to secure large-scale profit relies on overgrowing economies of scale.